Everybody, welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Tuesday, July 11. This is the All-Star Baseball version of the Board of Selectmen tonight. We start by reminding everybody that we have that we're being recorded. Just let everybody know. Apparently, we don't go out live anymore, so that we'll try to figure that out with Medfield TV. So that we can be seen live as well as recorded. And we always start with a moment of appreciation for our troops that are serving around the world. Thank you. So we start with an announcement here that there is an opening on the Council on Aging. If you're interested in serving on the board for the Council on Aging, please get in touch with Christine at the townhouse. And then we start with our appointments. Chief Meany, new police officers. Great news.
Yes, thank you. So good evening. I currently have 3 openings that we are working on filling. Background checks have been done on 2 candidates seated calmly in the front row without a slight of nervousness around them. The 3rd candidate, her background check is currently being done by SRO Detective Manganello, also in the back. So I'm anticipating that one of the meetings in August, if everything goes okay, we will present that person to you also. And the goal is we need about a month and a half or 2 months lead time in order to do all the preparatory work for physicals, physical agility testing, on to get them into an academy in October. So I have the first gentleman is John Godino. Grew up on West Street, lived in Medfield his life, went to the Norfolk Agricultural School, graduated in 2011. Served for 4 years with the United States Marine Corps. I have to say that since Eric Pellegrini transferred over to Rentham, I've never seen it in writing, but there's something where every police department is supposed to have 1 Marine. Gus, sorry about that, West Point, I know, but you know, I can't help that tonight. Also,
Marines are good guys. Huh?
oh, okay, all right, there we go.
Those guys in the ships. These guys actually walk around and do stuff.
Okay. Okay, I was going to try to keep it to 5 minutes, Christine, but this is going to devolve into a brawl any second now. So I just, we're going to leave that and move along and mention that John also worked full-time in Millis as a dispatcher. He worked full-time in Medway, and he works part-time for us as a dispatcher. So we've got to have some eyes on him and see his performance. Gone very well, worked very well for us. The other interesting thing that he did is he worked as an ice hockey referee. During high school, John?
Oh, before high school.
Before, okay. So dealing with ice hockey parents and their children on the ice, I think that probably sets him up for being able to resolve problems and issues that he might run into in the town of Medfield. He's also gone to the Municipal Reserve Training Academy, which unfortunately does not count as his academy, but that's 350 hours of training he's already had, so he should be fairly well prepped to handle anything the Municipal Police Training Academy throws at him, and during that time, he was also the president of his class. So, some leadership abilities recognized by his peers. Next to him, the small gentleman seated in the front row will be Chris Bonadies, another Medfield person who, basketball for sure, I know. Volleyball too? Volleyball too, okay, very good. Captain of the team in high school, Curry College, how many years captain? 3 years as captain of his college basketball team at Curry College. He graduated from Curry College in 2011. He currently works with the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department. Good luck with that. That has to be an incredibly difficult job. because here in Medfield, as we patrol the streets, we run into some very good people on a regular basis. When you're in those four walls, you're with people who, you know, have made the team. So being able to do that, I've worked with a couple other people that came out of the correctional facilities system, and you couldn't throw a lot of stuff past them. They could detect the lies, they could detect the bobbing and the weaving, and they were kind of like two-legged lie detectors. Just a really good skill to have. He's also attended their academy, which, great academy, but he and John will be side by side in the regular recruit academy. The other thing about Chris is that started working first for the fire department part-time. First for the fire department, then he still works part-time for the fire department, but somewhat saw the light, is wearing a blue tie, and began working part-time for us also as a police officer, and he's worked shifts in the street, and lots of compliments. Handles himself well, of course, at his height and stature, most people pretty well give up anyway. It would be the reasonable thing to do. So what this would be a conditional offer of employment based on the fact that they make it through the rest of the testing and whatnot, and based on the fact that they can fill in all the appropriate paperwork that Georgianne has for them, which may be one of the greatest tests of all, truly. And then we have some of the crew here in the back supporting Deputy Chief John Wilhelmy, Sergeant Geary, this is Officer Joe Brienzi, who's also one of those red-blue guys, Patrick Kelleher and Sergeant Lars Anderson, and is Colby Roy back there? Colby Roy is also back there. So, and yes, and Georgianne, I've already trashed you. So this is what I have to present to you. If you have any questions for these gentlemen.
Questions, guys? Anything you want to tell us?
And if you do, we have a traveling mic that, and that allows the people at home to hear what you say in addition to us. Do we have a mic right here?
I think your comments were excellent. Perfect. You're very well prepared for that.
Guess my one comment would be, in the 22 years that I've lived here, the police department in Medfield has had a quality that not all police departments have in all towns, and I think it's crucial for the community relationships. I think especially it's crucial for the police-student relationships, and just looking across the table, I think you've added 2 more.
Thank you. I agree.
All right, motion.
All right.
So I would move that we appoint John Cadino and Christopher Bonadies as police officers provisionally as requested by Chief Meany.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep. Congratulations, guys. Thank you so much for
Welcome.
Joining.
Congratulations, thank you.
the police department. Nice to meet you. Congratulations.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. Our next appointment's at 7:15 with the David Connor from the American Legion, but we have about 5 minutes before that, so why don't we go into our, citizen comment. No one ever signs up for that, so once again, we won't have citizen comment.
I'm just curious, did you want to talk about at least the one statement that came in? I mean, it's a comment. No action, this is the written statement about taxes. I don't care if you don't want to, it's just that I was trying to figure out what we were going to do with that.
We've always had sort of a general policy that if people don't sign their submissions, that we don't really recognize them.
Okay.
So we did get a complaint, basically, about taxes in town, but it was an unsigned submission.
Mhm.
But if you want to, we can, certainly.
The only thing I wanted to address and why I put it under informational, even though I know we have a policy to not do it, is there was a comment in there that we've hired somebody at the gate for $20,000 a year to watch for dogs, and that is not the case. We have not hired anybody for security at the gate for the state hospital, and definitely not for watching out for the dogs. That's the only comment I have.
So we have some action items that maybe we can take care of. Maurice Goulet, DPW Director, requests Selectmen to award and sign the paving contract for the town of Medfield to PJ Keating.
One thing about that, I did talk to Mo this week, and he is planning on doing the work at night, so that it will not interfere with the morning and evening commute. He thinks it'll last about a week and a half, so I just want to clear it with you people that it would be okay to do it, starting at, say, 7 o'clock.
Still in August?
Yes, they expect to have it done before school comes back. That's
This item is just the paving contract, right? Just the paving.
Mike, is this just the paving contract?
No, we're discussing just this paving contract right now.
yes, yeah. There's
I have two questions. In
Okay.
Mo's absence, maybe you can answer them, and it's informational. This is a 6.5-month contract that goes out till February. And I was thinking, why do we contract for paving materials in the months of December and January?
I
And
can
if we
answer
go-
that.
If we go, or it goes to January, go ahead.
So this is part of the Southeast Regional Group that we joined to do their cooperative purchasing. They purchase through, that's their fiscal year that they
Okay.
purchase through, so we're not planning on buying the materials then, but we joined in their contract late and their contract runs
So
through.
that's their cycle,
That's,
okay.
yep, that's the
Okay.
cycle of the contract.
And then the only other observation I had is when I looked at the different bids, particularly between the super pave hot mix asphalt, that was pretty consistent. But down at the bottom, the playground parking lots, this one particular bid priced the two the same. I noticed that the other contractors, they were all over the map, and they were all over the map with the structure adjustments and repairs. So inconsistent, the question I had is, did everybody have the same understanding of what they were bidding against?
I believe so, yeah. This organization puts together pretty good specs. They do it for probably 20 towns, so.
Okay.
And they did have the opportunity to come out and tour the sites and.
The pricing response
I-
is so different.
I've seen this, for example, when you go out to bid on a building,
Yep,
one contractor will bid low on ledge removal,
yep,
another will bid very high,
okay,
and especially when it's unit quantities,
yep,
because they're taking a risk that there will be less ledge or more ledge, or less asphalt or more asphalt. So sometimes it's a technique that they use in preparing their bids.
just checking.
But this would be the asphalt we would use for the summer as well.
This is they will bring it down. I believe it's about 2.5 inches. They will grind it down, and then this will be an overlay they will put on top of it. So
is there more in here besides that, or is it just for that one project?
it's just for the North Street and Main Street. The rest of them that he's already really done most of the rest. That was the chip seal
Right.
in the subdivision. That's all done.
Okay. Which are the playgrounds and parking lots that are being done as part of that project?
I know I believe they've done the work already at Wheelock. To be honest with you, I'm not sure.
So there's more in here than just the Main Street.
Yes, but I don't believe the
okay.
parking lots is that seal they're putting on the main roads. That is a different type of
Okay.
mix.
That was my question. So there's more than just the Main Street project in
A little
this
more,
bid,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
'Cause I didn't remember a playground or a parking lot in
Yeah.
along the way. Okay.
Any further questions? Do we have a motion to,
I would move that we award the bid to PJ Keating Company as requested by Maurice Goulet.
Second?
any further discussion? All in
Nope.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now it's 7:15, so David Connor, American Legion, discussion of Veteran Service Officer position. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Once again, my name is David Connor. I'm a resident of Medfield. Can everybody hear me? All right. Been here about 5 years. I'm a transplant. And we love it, okay? I've been in the Legion, American Legion, for 17 years. Currently, I am the post commander of Beckwith Post 110 here in Medfield. We have a concern, and our concern is a very concern that one of the most important posts in the Veteran Services is now vacant. And it's a bit concerning since the retirement of our past Veteran Service Officer was announced well in advance. Now I understand we had enjoyed a very long time partnership with the town of Medfield, the American Legion. We depend on the town of Medfield to focus on the individual veteran and the family, while we concentrate on the community and the nation. The Veteran Service Officer actually carries the responsibility that all veterans and their families living in the community receive the benefits they may qualify for. You probably know this, but right now there are 400 plus veterans families living in Medfield. Not all of them belong to a veterans organization, but the VSO is their contact. It's their point. If they want to find out what their benefits are, how they can get them, that's the person they talk to. And I have to point to Ron Griffin, who retired, and that's what we need. It's not only us, it's a town. Okay? We have veterans from World War II, Korea, Vietnam. I'm not sure about Iraq or Afghanistan. I've been a veteran since 1956. And I'm not familiar with all the benefits. So we need somebody to guide us through the VA maze. What I'm trying to say is we need a VSO. I have two questions. Does the town plan to carry out the mandated responsibilities of the Veteran Service Officer long-term as well as in the interim? Secondly, how the town will continue to administer without delay the benefits of our most needy families that qualify for Massachusetts Chapter 115 benefits. To give you an idea of the Massachusetts benefits, this was handed to me this evening. One person, veteran, they get reimbursed for their health care insurance, Medicare, prescription insurance, medical procedures that aren't covered by the health insurance. They get reimbursed for this every month. And it's needed. On top of that, if I needed something, I have to have somebody to go talk to. I don't. It's nobody. So we need this desperately. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I think that the answer is that we intend to get a veteran service officer. We're just in the process, and that we're working with the state to figure out. We're in this twixt in between because we're over 12,000 in population. We're legally
12,000
required to have a full-time veteran service officer, and we never have. And the veteran service officer can actually do other things in addition to serving the veterans, and so that we're
point.
We're looking into solutions, as I understand. Mike, I think you were looking to comment?
Yes, we have a caseload of 3 cases right now. Ron has fortunately agreed to continue assisting us in the interim while we continue to look. It's a very difficult position to fill. We've been in touch with Needham. Needham would let us into their district, except the way the law reads, you have to be contiguous, and Dover does not belong to the district, so we can't go to that particular district because we're not contiguous. We've been in touch, or trying to get in touch with Walpole. both on our own and through the state. Haven't heard any response from them. They're the only other town that we abut that is required to have a full-time. All the other towns we abut are below 12,000 population.
And to that point, I've had a discussion with one of the selectmen in Sherborne. They're not required to have a full-time VSO, but I've actually said, if your part-time VSO would like to be a full-time VSO, we'd be more than happy to pay them a heck of a lot more than you're paying them. Their VSO, I think, is someone who's largely doing it because he just is, it's almost a volunteer job for him. So we
Well-
have some boxes. I have a question for you, Mr. Connor.
Sure.
I suspect that the Legion, as an institution, as an organization, has a better sense of the veterans that are in this area who would be a qualified candidate for this job. Do you have a list, or can you give us a list of veterans who are both qualified and interested?
I can't promise that. I'll try, okay?
Chris?
But
Oh.
the point is, not all veterans that live in Medfield belong to an organization. They're out there alone.
But my point, Ron, I'm gonna look at you as a model of something we may, unless we get lucky, we will never probably find a VSO who both is a VSO and dedicated to that job, but also almost blended over into kind of the military historian of the town, the sorts of events that have nothing to do with veterans' benefits. You know, I don't know that we're ever going to get that lucky again. Maybe we will. But there's something that Ron has mentioned about the role and the skills of a VSO that go beyond just being a veteran and being able to connect, but actually having that insight and skill into the social programs, not all of which are veterans programs, but that support veterans.
I understand, yeah.
That's a really tough skill set.
But if you decide on a person that you want to have as a VSO, there's a long training to go through with that. I had the occasion to speak with the director of Veteran Services, and he even said to me, they would hire a full-time VSO and give them other duties, maybe they could work something out.
We have been looking into that. We've talked to the Council on Aging at Ron's suggestion, because they have a social worker, and they are very satisfied with the current arrangements. They do not wish to change their social worker, and the social worker is not a veteran. We have social workers in the schools. We have social workers in the outreach department. None of those seem particularly appropriate for this duties.
So the reason I bring up the question is because from my perspective, that's the difficulty, is there's a demanding skill set. Legally, at least, there's a requirement to go to a full-time position without it really being a full-time job by itself. And that's why the provision is there. We'll bring them on full-time and then find something else for them to do. Speaking as a veteran, the idea that we would go to a veteran and say, hey, how about if we make this a full-time job? It's not. But you're a veteran, let's just throw money at you, and you have only a half meaningful job to do. That's just flat out unacceptable.
That's right.
And I'm not saying this to say, so don't worry about it, give us another 3 years, but I'm saying it because this is actually a difficult skill set with a bunch of legal parameters that box us in. And actually, I was hoping
But
that maybe,
my issue is, one of my issues, in the meantime, in the interim, what do we do?
We'll work
No
with.
phone number to call.
We'll
I
work
can't
with Ron.
refer anybody.
We'll work with Ron. We'll work with the accounting department. He's explained the monthly vouchers that are prepared for the accounting department, and we'll continue to work on that. In the meantime, we have had outreach in addition to Needham. We've outreached to Dover. We've outreached to Millis. We've outreached to Walpole. We're outreaching to Franklin. I have an appointment next week with the assistant to the county commissioners. They have a contractual arrangement with several towns to provide veteran services officers. one of the reasons I was hoping to avoid anything like that is I would vastly prefer to have a local person as a veterans agent. I think they understand Medfield, they understand the veterans of Medfield much better.
Well, I think the
And if
person
it's
has to be
possible
in
to
town.
find that, that would be the best solution. Chris has talked to the Board of Assessors and got a list of all the veterans in town, not just the ones in the Legion, but all the veterans. And we're sending out a letter to all the veterans asking them, well, not all the veterans, but, you know, all the veterans that we, of a certain age, that we think might be interested, and see if there is any interest locally. I would definitely, you know, all of our veterans agents, since I've been here, have been local residents. And I think that's the best way. If you can find someone who is qualified and interested in it, that would be the way to go. If not, then I think we have to look outside the community and try to come up with a solution that way.
Can I be kept in the loop on this? Please?
Can you be what?
Kept in the loop? What's going on?
Absolutely, sure.
Yep.
Could I ask you one more thing?
Sure.
If you are aware of somebody who's slipping through the cracks,
I will
let us
mention
know.
that.
I don't think if Ron's backstopping us, that may not happen, but if you think that's happening, tell us.
Possible I'll get back. But I need to know if somebody comes to us and says, I need, what's this benefit? I have no idea. And I'm not gonna give them a bad answer. So I need to get the answer. Okay?
So I guess I had a question that I'd like to follow up with, based on what you said, Mike, for Ron, because my understanding was, Ron, you had circulated the proposal for a position that worked with the Council on Aging, the Youth Outreach, and the Veteran Services together. Is that something that is off the table at this point, or is that not workable at this point? And if you wouldn't mind using a microphone so that when the people at home watch this, they can hear you?
So yes, I did prepare a statement. I worked with the outreach workers, Cheryl LaValle and Don Elcott and Chelsea. And we talked about the number of other kinds of services that the townspeople might need that might be done by the social services group, and they may not have time to do them. Such things might be doing food stamps, doing heating allowances, you know, some of those other projects. And but I think what Mike addressed earlier was that he worked with he talked with the Council of Aging, and they weren't interested in doing that. I think that was to his
It's not-
comment a little
it's-
earlier.
It's not so much that they're not interested, they're very happy with the arrangement that with the employee they now have. And they feel it's working out very well for
So
them.
the Council on Aging isn't interested in doing this they were at one point apparently, and they're no longer, or?
Well, I worked with Cheryl LaValle, so
She was interested
she's
okay.
She's the outreach worker there, not
Yeah,
the
not
director.
the director. Yeah, okay.
And we talked about opportunities of what they might do, you know, what tasks they might be able to take on and free up. Because I work a lot with Cheryl, with a lot of cases, because most of the veterans in town are elderly, so they fit into both of our categories. So when I'm helping one or she's helping one, if that person happens to be a veteran or the family is a veteran, you know, there's overlap in our responsibilities. Less so with the youth outreach workers, but we have a young family that needs assistance, you know, then I'm working with them. So we do work together from time to time, and we wanted to share, you know, what our responsibilities would be. And I submitted that letter, you know, to the selectmen for review as my effort to try to create ideas to the town that where the veteran service officer doesn't require full-time activity. There just isn't enough people coming in and asking those questions, although there's more than 3, so, he's mentioned 3 families, and that's, what I do is support all the questions of all the benefits that all veterans have in their families. So that's the bulk of the work. It's the 3 families that are needy families. They're not the bulk of my work. And that is, to your point, that is where the bulk of the education comes in, because basically they're coming in asking about any imaginable benefit that is available through the federal government or through the state of Massachusetts. And the state of Massachusetts offers a lot of benefits, probably more so than any other state in the nation. Massachusetts treats their veterans very well. So there is a huge learning curve. There is a great deal of knowledge that is needed before the veterans up to date. And perhaps one of the question I had for you is, because it seems like you're looking to hire a part-time veteran service officer, would the state allow you to do that? It seems clear that they have a law that says to be in compliance with the law, you have to hire full-time services. So I don't know that they would allow you to hire a part-time person. If you did hire a part-time person, they wouldn't provide the training that's so valuable needed to do the job. I don't think they would provide the passwords to log on to the system, to file for benefits. I don't think the town could get reimbursed for any of the benefits that they currently get reimbursed for, because there'd be no, they wouldn't train you or allow you access to submit for reimbursement. I think.
Ron, let me respond at least partially, and maybe there's more, because I obviously have been interested in this issue. My perception, and I think it's accurate, is that the actual VSO job in Medfield, forget the law, that job is not the workload associated with that job is not a full-time workload.
And I don't dispute that.
So there's one issue here that says, so the law says, well, bureaucratically, you need to hire a full-time VSO, but we all recognize there's no need for a full-time VSO. But the law does make the provision that says if you can find a way to combine the VSO role with another half-time role, or if you can find another way to join with another town to make it a full-time job, then there's ways. So even the law recognizes that maybe it's not really necessary. My comment earlier had to do with the fact that I think it's insulting to a veteran, any veteran, to say, you know what, you probably really can't do a meaningful job, but we'll give you a full-time job and call it that and pay you that. Anyway, I find that insulting. So to me, the path to getting to an answer has got to be a meaningful, if the law says it's a full-time job, we need to find a meaningful full-time job that allows the VSO officer to do their job and that shows them the respect and the confidence in their abilities that I think they're due. Let me tell you something, though, that I've learned about the part-time VSO. You've been a part-time VSO, and I think Medfield has done its best to provide a salary for the part-time VSO that reflects it as a part-time job. So you haven't made bongo bucks, but at least you got paid. What I've learned is many surrounding towns that have part-time VSOs, it's a virtual volunteer position. So they comply with the law as a part-time VSO, and they don't put any money into it at all, or they put like nominal money into it. So when we're getting beaten up because we're not full-time compliance, and we've been doing what we've been doing for the past however long we've been doing it, trying to be as considerate and supportive of even our VSOs as we are, and then we get to a spot in time where suddenly, you're 24 people over 12,000, this is a full-time spot. There's a piece of me that gets downright mad. And I'm not pushing back at you, and I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying we need to do it the right way, and it's really hard because it's hard to get that unique combination of skills on the social side with the veterans qualification on the veterans side to put those into a full-time job. Because think who's going to want to do it. I don't think you would have wanted a full-time job because you didn't necessarily need it. And a young veteran coming back from the Middle East, they're not going to want a do-nothing job. They're going to want a meaningful job. And so it's kind of like it's a hard requirement to find, I think. I'm not saying so don't worry about it. I'm just saying, but understand the challenge of it is not because people don't care. It's because it's a tough slot to fill.
But it's been a tough slot for over 6 years. So the town was notified in July of 2011 that they needed to be in compliance with the law. It's now over 6 years later. And so it's not like the state hasn't given you some time to work out those details. So we're 6 years later, and all during that time, I had always said that if you could fulfill that requirement, I would step away from the positions to allow you to fulfill it, because we all do recognize exactly what you said, the difficulty of this. So if the opportunity arises to hire someone with multiple talents, if the opportunity arises to make efforts to work with a neighboring town to form a district, that was all for it. And the state has given you 6 years to comply with that law.
You just did too good a job, Ron. That's it. Fair point. Fair point.
But in every time I've come before the selectmen, every one of my town reports, I bring up this very same issue, that we still have this lurking in front of us and that we should act upon it. And, now we are many years, I've been doing that since 2012. So,
Point taken. Point taken.
So now I think the town has kind of boxed themselves into a position where really the only way out, the immediate way out, is to hire a full-time veteran service officer and then work out the other problems or the other opportunities for a district or whatever. I'm also not sure that if you were to form a district, I don't know if it requires a vote in the town, for the town. Is that something that the selectmen are authorized to go out and form, or would it require a vote of the town, which places you till next April before you can even discuss that. So, the full-time position is something that you can act upon, be in compliance immediately, and probably get someone to hire on, yes, and not be very busy. But had we worked on this 5 years ago, we wouldn't be here today.
Sounds like the first step would be
So
to find some candidates.
Does anyone know of what is required of a selectman to enter into an agreement with for a district? Is that something that would require a town? They could enter into that agreement? Because it takes a long time to work with towns to build a partnership, and that's towns don't necessarily work together too well sometimes.
For
Right.
example, when I called Dover has no cases. They said, why would we join a district and pay $1,000 when we have no cases? If we're not contiguous with Needham, you can't join a district there. Walpole hasn't responded to
Well, we met in 2013. I went over and met with Walpole to try to get a district going.
Yeah.
Do you remember that meeting?
Yes, I do.
So,
That's why we're trying now to work with the county. My understanding,
and I also worked
the
with the
co-
county on that to get that meeting in place, and that was held in March of 2013.
and the county hired a young man. I remember he was out he met with us for a couple of meetings. He was a returning veteran from, I believe it was Iraq. And
Yes.
he stayed about 3 months and left. And
Yes, and he was since hired. Since then, that job has been replaced. Dale Kurtz, who is currently the
In
veteran
Franklin.
service officer in Franklin, also occupies that position.
Right, and that's who we're going to be talking to.
But it's not a full-time position anymore. It was a full-time position, but
Right.
now it's not a full-time position for the county anymore. And it was a veterans advocate for the county to try to get county resources involved in veterans help. So that was one place that was missing. So the county,
Did you say Dale Kurtz is a VSO in Franklin?
I did, yes.
Is he right now?
He is right now. Oh, is he here now?
No, is he, no. Is the VSO there right now?
He is the VSO there right now.
Can we team with Franklin?
I'm trying to, well, we're not contiguous with them, but I'm trying to arrange a meeting that's for next week with him and with the county. He's a contract employee of the county.
I went to school with Dale.
Did you?
I know
Okay.
Dale.
Okay.
I just didn't know he was the VSO.
Yeah.
So if you set something up, let me know
My
and I'll go.
understanding of him, he'd be very satisfactory, and it would be a nice boost in
I can
salary
twist his
for
arm.
him. Good.
Okay. Progress. Okay. Yes.
Can I ask a question, Gerard Irwin?
Yes, can you use the microphone either at the,
Gerard Irwin, Woodfall Road, Medfield. I just have a question of Mike. He mentioned earlier in the conversation that you had a mailing going out to veterans of a certain age. I'm just wondering why you say a certain age. Do you think only certain veterans of a certain age need help?
We just think there was a cutoff point when people would not be interested in coming back to work. It was an older age, not a younger age.
What makes you think younger veterans don't need assistance?
Oh, no, I'm talking about for the veteran service agent that we're sending the list
Okay,
out to
but maybe
people that might
maybe
be.
the younger guys have ideas. And part of the problem, as I see it as a veteran, is until I came across Ron, I had no idea of the things that were available to me. And I stumbled across Ron by mistake. I think if, by accident, I should say, certainly not by mistake. I think if a lot of the younger veterans were contacted, they might be surprised to find out what they're entitled to.
Well, they're the ones we're going to contact to see if they'd be interested in the Veteran Services Officer's position. You may have misunderstood. When I said a cutoff, we were talking about maybe someone over 80 would not be interested in coming back to work.
I'll speak to that.
So we were going to try to have a cutoff point where you'd send it out to everybody under 80, every veteran. So.
Another comment back?
can you wait just a second? Because I had a question for Ron to follow up. Ron, none of us want to make a make-work position out of this, but when you put together that proposal for the three groups to work together, the Veteran Service Officer, the Council on Aging, and the Youth Outreach, I'm assuming that you made some sort of evaluation of the amount of, whether that would create a real job or not. Do you have a sense as to whether that really is a real position, a real full-time position or not?
Because I don't do their job, I really didn't. You know, we were trying to identify opportunities.
Yeah,
So.
but
one
you
of-
conferred with them to do that, didn't you?
And one of the opportunities that we identified was the SHINE program. So the SHINE program, when we talked about it, we know that that's in danger of not being funded anymore. And we know that that's a valuable resource within the town. So as it turns out, they've funded the SHINE program for another 6 months. So it is funded until March of next year. But we were all very concerned about what that program would, the void it would create if it wasn't funded. And certainly that position, that and the VSO position together would probably be a very busy person, because now you're embracing the entire senior population in town.
Yep. All right, thank you so much then.
The catch is that position would have to be a veteran.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Jeff Chunglo, President of the Massachusetts Veteran Service Officers Association.
Oh, thank you for coming.
So, sure. You know, this is an issue we all want to get on board with. You know, we want to provide, every community wants to provide the best possible services and benefits to the veterans. So we're committed to assisting you. Our association is, we will assist you in any way we can through hiring, resources, anything to help you along with this process. With DVS, I work very closely with the secretary, and you are correct, as long as you know, you can hire a part-time person or a full-time person and give them an additional duty as long as it's signed off by the secretary. So those things are all in play, or districts, but we're more than happy to pursue those with you. We just want to make sure that all of our veterans and your veterans here are getting the services they need. So, and Ron has done an outstanding job. I'd just like to say that.
We agree. Thank you for coming in. Can you just leave us a card so that we have a way to get
Yes.
back in touch with you?
So is your organization able to identify veterans that, you heard the discussion around the kind
Sure.
of restrictive skill set. Is
Yep.
your organization able to identify and refer veterans that would be qualified to play that kind of a hybrid job, because they bring both the veterans' experience and I don't know whether I should say, it's not really social work skills, but for lack of a better term.
There's definitely counseling skills.
Right.
Absolutely. So part of it would be, if the town wanted to put together a job description posting, we could post that throughout our association. Every town in our association, they can list it. Obviously, we'd like to find a local vet that would be interested in doing that job, but if not, so we could certainly assist with screening candidates and choosing an appropriate person to fill that position.
I keep picturing a young vet that has some academics or some, even service experience in that social space. This is not a bad town for a young family to move to. And being able to move, if we were able to structure a true full-time job, this is not a bad town for paying full-time people to play a meaningful role. So it's not like it would be an unattractive place
Right.
for someone to come. It's just that I don't think, I don't know that the Legion necessarily plugs into some of the youngest veterans so quickly.
Right.
And they don't necessarily move out to Medfield on their own, so they're not automatically local.
I think the other focus is on the VA side of the house as well, for service-connected disabilities and pensions. That seems to be a very large caseload for a lot of communities, and the benefit for that is it brings in tax-free revenue to your town. So it's spent locally in your town, hundreds of thousands of dollars for the average community. So I think that would be a focus. I did like Ron's proposal of teaming that with, I am a VSO myself in Arlington. So I work very closely with my Council on Aging and the Shine counselors. Those are tremendously important and valuable skills to not only take care of your older population in general, but then also your veteran population. So I think there could definitely be ways to work that out, but again, we stand committed to assist you in filling that position.
So if you wouldn't mind, just sharing a little bit of information about your position in Arlington. You must be a full-time,
I'm full-time.
and do you have a full-time workload there, or do you do other things in addition to being a VSO for the town?
I do. I have a full caseload. I have approximately 55 cases for Chapter 115, but then it's
That's the reimbursement money?
correct. But then the flip side is the VA. The VA claims, paperwork, death burial benefits, discharge. The gamut of VA casework is tremendous. So the actual time that I spend managing my Chapter 115 cases is relatively small compared to the amount of time that I put in on the VA claims. So, and that's where you tend to get that big boost for people. Your older clients that are looking for aid and attendance, additional money from the VA to provide care at home for veterans and dependents. Your service-connected disability claims for your veterans coming back, as well as your aging veterans. That's equally as important. So it's a large encompassing job. So you can't look at just Chapter 115. You can't look at VA because it includes all those extras on health care, the best plans and benefits for all your elderly veterans, and then as well as any other elderly couple that may come in seeking any benefits or services.
So I'm personally interested because when I was in law school, I worked on the rating board at the Veterans Administration. And in those days, in the 70s, most of the veterans were represented by the service organizations, the DAV and the other service organizations.
Yes.
But it sounds like you're representing them instead of the service organizations.
We are. So as being part of a VSO, now we are certified by the state. So we're certified to manage the Chapter 115, and we're also certified for VA claims processing. So we're instituting a new VetRespect system, computer system, which ties right into the state for processing those service-connected or any VA claims. So that's important. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're very appreciative of you taking your free time to come and talk to us instead of watching the All-Star game, so thank you.
It's all right. So, no, so we are committed to help you, and we'll work with anybody else here in town, and we'll hopefully get your veterans back on track.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes?
Hi, I'm sorry, Ron. I'm Donna McClellan from Blacksmith Drive. And I just had a question from what Mike said about Needham and Franklin. Is there any way to override that contingency, that they must be contiguous
That would require a legislative action.
by,
It's in
by
the
the
sta-
state legislature?
Yes, yeah.
And how difficult would that be?
Yeah, virtually impossible, I would say, probably. Unless. Yeah.
So my suggestion to Mike was going to be that he go back and tell Dover that we'll provide them with a veteran service agent at no cost if they'll allow us access to Needham.
So I just want to follow up on a couple of points. One of them is that, what I do to counsel those veterans is not visible to anybody. That's counseling I do one-on-one. No one else knows about it. You know about the 3 cases of Chapter 115 that I currently have, but you don't know that number was once 10. All right, and I think when I first, you were in the warrant committee when I first started, and you asked me, how many people am I going to get? And I said 12, and I got 10 families, so I was pretty accurate. But it's, most of that work that I do, it's not the 115 workload that keeps me busy. It is answering all the questions in the VA and working with those claims. Sometimes I'm probably 20 or 30 hours working with a family to process some of the claims. Some of the claims are 40, 50 pages long. It's working with the VA. If you make a mistake, you go into appeal. They're currently 7 years into appeal. So you don't want to have anything go into appeal because it's 7 years before they even look at it. So you have to do your due diligence up front on the initial claim. And the one last point I'd like to make is, because I've heard the word he a few times, think she. I think most of the new veteran service officers in the state are largely female veterans. So they maybe have a better ability with social graces and so open your mind to not just he, to she.
So you at one point told me that you thought the ideal candidate would be a she, who I believe was a social worker. Isn't that what you were expressing?
I might have said that.
Yeah.
But again, I was trying to get people from thinking he, because it is something we all go back to every now and again, to think that the veterans are he. When you look at the current younger veteran population, there's a great majority of them are now female. So keep them in mind. Millis has a part-time veteran service officer, but she's female, and it's working out very well. And I think there's like 30 other towns in Massachusetts that have female VSOs. 50? 50, all right. So you see, it's a growing population within the veteran community and also within the VSO community. Because probably 5, 6 years ago, there was just a handful, right? Yeah, if that.
We had 2 female leads. One was not interested. The other was given a better offer of employment at her former employer, and even though we had hired her, she left. And that would have been an ideal arrangement because she would have qualified as a veteran, and it would have been a nice little bonus to her salary, but we couldn't do it. She was given a substantial raise to stay at her current job.
Ron, thank you for sticking with us. Appreciate it. So we're a little bit over our.
Can I just-
Yep, please.
So just so I'm clear, so as to the plan, as to what we're doing from here, is the plan we're gonna pursue in the first instance collaboration with towns that are contiguous? Is that the line?
Yes, and with the county
Okay,
and Franklin, so,
and we're gonna send a letter
yep.
to a group of veterans that you and Christine have selected,
Actually, the Board of Assessors,
Board of
Assessors,
okay,
yeah.
and see what interest we get in
Yeah.
response. I mean, one suggestion that I would make is that I thought Ron's proposal for combining it with positions of the Council on Aging was a good one, but I think we're more likely to be successful if we're a little more agnostic on the other responsibilities that we would give this person. Because if we're just looking for veterans who want to also be social workers, that's a smaller group maybe than veterans who have some other skill set that the town could use. And so I would think if we're going to go ahead and hire a full-time VSO, we might be able to craft the other parts of the job if we don't have someone who's interested in being a social worker. I mean, it would seem to me that a part of the skill set could fit with other offices in town as well. So,
Let me loop that
Good
back
point,
to the
yeah,
offer you
yeah.
made then, where you said if we wrote a job description and provided the VSO organization with an actual job description, which would be some combination of responsibilities, you'd be able to use your network to go out there. I think, Mike, your point is, well, that job description isn't automatically a VSO combined with a social worker skill. There may be, maybe we'd have, we'd only need one, but we might have 3 job descriptions, one of which is tied to social work, one of which is tied to IT, I'm making it up, tied to IT, and another one of which is tied to education. And that, so you might get, 3 job descriptions. We're only really looking for one, but I thought the idea of offering something you could actually put out there through your organization, that also, if we can't find candidates, that sounded like a good channel for us to go. Okay.
because I mean, the skill set of dealing with the benefits application and the rest, while not the whole job, could fit with a finance type position as well.
Yeah.
A person who had those abilities, who maybe didn't want to do it. I mean, just the broader the net we cast, the more likely we're to get somebody, because it's not like we're turning away dozens of candidates who are interested in filling the full-time position.
I wish, yeah.
So,
Okay.
so maybe we can put it on the calendar to reconnect on this. How,
It probably ought to be a pending item on the agenda.
Pending item, okay.
Yeah.
we'll talk about it every time then.
Very good. Next item on our agenda is Christian Chin, Library Director, and Michelle Fine Silver, Medfield Garden Club. Request for funding for the Medfield Public Library Rain Garden and Native Pollinator Garden.
Sent these out many times, but things kept changing.
Thank you.
I had 2 pads tonight, so in the interest of time,
Oh, thank you.
we'll pass out 2 different
Thank you.
requests.
Doing the pollinator garden first? Oh, that's right, I'm getting ready to sprint myself here. Good. It's a good thing Evelyn's on vacation.
Okay. Well, thank you for having us here this evening. I'm Kristen Chin. I'm the library director, and this is Michelle Finesilver. She is the president of the Garden Club. of Medfield, and we are here tonight to ask for funding for, as you said, a rain and pollinator garden at the entrance of the library. We're requesting $3,958.68 to come from the town's local meal tax fund. The total cost of the project is $9,468.68. On the third page, you'll see a budget that outlines the cost of the plants and soil amendments and labor and equipment fees. We were able to save some money, thankfully, to Kevin Ryder from Parks and Rec, who agreed to remove and dispose of the materials. So that will save us $2,100. We do have to rent a sod cutter. And the Friends of the Medfield Library are contributing $3,500 to this project, contingent on our finding additional funds. So just a little background. Michelle and I met Arts and Bloom in the library. She introduced herself as the garden club president, incoming garden club president, and we kind of thought maybe we should collaborate on projects together. Well, we set up a date, and in speaking to Michelle, it was clear that this was going to go beyond flower arranging. Her passion is sustainable gardening. She has a certificate in native plant design and horticulture. So she asked me, Chris, what would you like to see? And knowing that her scope was wider than I had originally thought, I shot for the moon, and I said, well, what about a rain garden? I had seen one in my community where I live, and it really was a great opportunity for the public to see something like this in action, to learn what it is, to learn how important it is in our very changing times of climate disruptions. So I was very excited to bring this to my trustees, and they were equally as excited as I was, just to know that the library could continue to educate the public, but in very different ways. And to have this outside the library with interactive signage that will explain what it is, QR codes leading to more resources, as well as workshops, library books, videos, online resources, you know, just to show the public that this is something that they can do in their own yards as we begin to think of ways to live more sustainably. So I'm going to turn this over to Michelle because, as I said, she's quite passionate, as you will see, and she really is the heart behind this project.
Well, I'm wearing two hats tonight, actually. I also have a request for funding for our civic plantings because Nancy Taylor couldn't be here this evening, but I'm working with Kristen as a community volunteer. And I just wanted to explain to you that putting a rain garden in the center of town, this will be a native pollinator garden, it will be a rain garden. I think that you'll find, once you ask me questions and we do some more explanation in terms of the technicalities, that this is really going to educate the town of Medfield in terms of stormwater management. It's very, this is cutting edge kind of development. We did some research. There are fewer than 12 libraries in the United States that have rain pollinator gardens outside their front doors. And the educational possibilities for this are enormous. Okay, Chris does a lot of work with preschool kids. She does work with grade school, middle school, high school. She does adult programs. This kind of a garden could be used to educate budding young naturalists. I have Damien Sheehy is here tonight. His son is going to be involved as an Eagle Scout in this project. We have conservation programs already lined up in the spring and the fall for ever, as long as we have this, project in their conservation badge. I think he's going to speak to that in just a few minutes. But, I want you to understand that the technical piece will be done by a LEED certified gardener. He's a garden designer for landscapes in Arlington, Massachusetts. He has done many rain gardens throughout New England and New York. He's also he also has been vetted. Nancy Teller just came in. We vetted him. We have seen his work. There's a video online if you want to see the kinds of things that he does. He does community plantings in terms of, the establishment of the rain garden. So what I'd like to do then is I would like to open it up for questions from the select board in terms of the technical parts that you would like to know about. The surface area for the roof that will be collecting rain is about 900 square feet. And the downspout that we would be using is the one directly to the left of the library door. What Trevor would do is he would make a cut, and you can see in here on the second page, okay? So the cut in that elbow is made about, 9 to 12 inches. Right here, Mr. Murphy, it's over here. And what happens is that the standpipe, okay, is covered with a stone that's removable in case the garden is ever moved at some point. Then what happens is that the rain comes down. The rain garden would be about 150 square feet. It is like a bathtub. That's the shape of it. And you can see, I think we have a cross section here in the back so you can see what it looks like. Is it
On the back of
on
the
back?
budget.
Okay, all right. So you can see it's kind of like a bathtub, all right? And what happens is when the water comes down, okay, we have it's like a stone stream. It slows the water down and it starts to dissipate. It goes into this kind of bathtub, okay, this depression. 50% of it is gravel. Then we have about 30% that's loam. And then, we have a composted layer on the top. And then we have the plantings go in, and it's mulched. And so when I met with Water and Sewer, town solicitor said to me, well, is there any standing water? The garden is designed in such a way that it will take runoff from the roof easily, a 1-inch rain event and larger, because what happens is there's a berm down the end and it holds the water back, it dissipates throughout the garden, and then it has an overflow that goes into the lawn area and into the storm drains. There's one in back of the library and there's one further down on the other side of the gazebo. So, do people have questions? I don't even know where to begin. There's so much to learn. Now, I wanted to explain to you also that in these kinds of gardens, we put native plants. The reason that we put native plants in them is that they are exquisitely adapted to this area. And it is counterintuitive in terms of the planting. We do not put plants in rain gardens that are water plants. We put plants in rain gardens that can tolerate drought. Because if we have a storm and 2 weeks later, it hasn't rained, they have to be able to tolerate over a long period of time not having any water. So the water goes deeply down into the roots and they are able to sustain themselves. So, and the native plants, the first year, once we install them, they require maintenance like any garden would require maintenance. But then what happens is when they get established, they use far less water, they're far more sustainable. And what we would like to do is to be able to teach the community about using these kinds of plants on their own property so that they're using less water. So the American family uses about 320 gallons of water a week. And in the summer months, about 50 to 60% of that is used as irrigation. And then another 50% is lost because of too quick watering, because of evaporation. So we really are, doing this project to try to educate the community in terms of sustainability, in terms of planting, and in terms of storm management. Now, one of the issues of having a volunteer garden like this, and the people that have been involved thus far are volunteers, is maintenance. So here's the good news, is that I've been reaching out to the community, and the other thing is, let me just back up. A rain garden doesn't require the kind of maintenance that a manicured garden requires. Okay, so what happens is that you're looking at stems, you're looking at seed pods because you're trying to attract wildlife. So the maintenance is weeding, is sometimes deadheading, is sometimes cultivating, and it's usually 2 to 4 weeks depending on conditions. So I have a maintenance plan already set up. It is 10 events where people are going to come in and do the maintenance. The scouts are going to do spring and fall, and they're going to do the major cleanup in the spring and putting to bed in the fall. Then Starbucks wants volunteer community opportunities. So the manager for Starbucks he's already volunteered, and he's got his staff on board. Needham Bank is there to do this with us. Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. We have members of the Medfield Garden Club. 2 of them are here tonight, Keith and Mary Yolden, that have been working on this as volunteers. So we have in place a volunteer network to take care of the maintenance so that, the garden isn't going to be in disrepair. So I think that's, we've had some questions about that, so I took care of it. So
I took care of it. It's done.
So
Don't give us a chance to ask any questions.
So anyway, I don't know. There's so much to talk about. I'm so excited about this project.
It's very exciting. We're excited.
One, Mr. Chairman. if
Sure,
I could.
please, go ahead, Mike.
I think I know the answer to this, but someone asked me, and I think probably other people might be interested. You often hear these cases where a child will drown in 6 inches of water. Is this water likely to present a danger to young children, or?
No.
And if not, why not?
Because the way that it's designed is that we don't have standing water. So what happens is that by the time you put the mulch layer on, all right, it's not a bathtub shape anymore, all right, it's level. So even the bottom edge where the berm is, okay, that berm is built up, and then the materials that go inside of that depression, all right, are going to be level. So that the water is going to come down. We're going to have stone streams so that it will slow the water down and dissipate. Now, the perk numbers are in here. So Nancy Teller and her husband, Ralph, who's an engineer, an environmental engineer, did perk testing, informal perk testing on this, and it perked really well. The numbers are in here. So it was completely drained within a very short period of time. So the soil is already very friable, and we have this layer of gravel going in, we have the layer of loam, and then we have the rocks to slow it down so it will dissipate. Now, another question that I had when we talked to we talked to water and soil. Okay, and I think it was you, solicitor, who asked me about the distance from the foundation. It will be 10 feet from the foundation of the library. That's one of the technical aspects of it. It always has to be 10 feet away. So,
Yes. Anything else?
So I guess, and saying it's 10 feet away raises in my mind, because I thought it was gonna be right up against the building. And if you're having a 10-foot distance from the
Yeah, it'll
building.
flood out the basement potentially.
right,
Yeah,
right.
so that, how wide is how big across is the bowl that you're building?
So it's 150 square feet. So right now, there are 3 crab apples, okay? And there's 1, and then 1 and 1. So the bowl is going to go in between those and then spread out at the bottom. There will be native shrub plantings unrelated to the rain garden up against the library, because we're gonna remove those old boxwoods.
The rain garden doesn't go up against the library, it goes
No, it has
across
to be
the
10 feet.
sidewalk.
Right, and,
Between the Zulu, it's in the middle between the Zulu and the library then?
no.
No.
So,
It's on the existing area on the inside of the walkway
Right.
towards the library. It all fits within that area.
right,
Right.
right.
Is that where that bench is that's dedicated to the
Right,
9/11?
exactly.
Exactly.
Behind there, and if you
that
actually
bench.
measure, it's a lot deeper. The depth of the existing shrubbery that's against the foundation is a lot deeper than you think. It's about 6 feet right to the edge, so, and then you just add a couple more feet for the edges of this garden.
Right.
So when you walk the site, it actually makes more sense than trying to visualize it in your mind.
And Nancy and I, the shrubs, they're a Malus sargentii. It's a crabapple. And it grows, 6 to 8 feet tall, but it grows out this way. So Nancy and I are both skilled pruners, so we've already talked to Parks and Rec, and we have volunteered our services to go up there in the wintertime when the leaves are off, so that we can clean out those overgrown crabapples, so that we can open up, that whole area and, lift up some of those bottom branches. We see the shape of the tree, and we see the shape of the rain garden, more specifically, so.
So my next question had to do with, I'm an attorney, so I think about liability issues, like Frank does. And I heard you say it would take up to like an inch of rain, and
Yes.
sometimes we get rains that are more than an inch. In the winter, I can see the water flowing over
Yes.
and creating an icing issue. That creates legal liabilities for the town, I think, if we're diverting the water onto the sidewalks. How much rain can the water, or the rain garden take, I guess, would be my question.
Well, I don't want to tell you wrong, so I don't know the answer to that, okay? I can give you Trevor's number and his email, and you can ask him that.
It's from landscape
Right.
design.
He is the
mean,
designer
Yeah.
Okay.
and the
Landscapes.
contractor, and I know that they build that issue into it. I'm doing the best I can, not being an engineer to do this. And he couldn't be here tonight to do, the presentation. So, but you certainly can ask him.
Yeah, we can definitely get that information, but it
Yeah.
should be well absorbed within the confines of the garden. There shouldn't be any spillage.
Right.
I need to
I
figure
guess
out
the
where-
bottom line would be any overflow cannot be flowing across the sidewalk.
Right.
No.
I'm trying to picture right now with the current configuration, you're not actually collecting water off the roof that would normally go somewhere else and drawing it in, or are you? Because if all you're doing is dealing with the water that already comes off the roof and enters that part of the property,
Right.
we're not adding water to the overall piece of property. You might, because of the way you're directing it, there might still be an icing issue, that's fair, but it's not like you're finding a way to get the water that would go off the other side of the roof to bring it around to flood this area or
But
something.
I'm guessing that this goes into
it.
it.
Because it actually sort of is like having a dry well.
Nancy, if you're gonna talk, could you use the microphone? That allows the people at home to hear what you're saying.
Sorry.
Thank you.
That's actually a good point and a good way to look at it, because it's essentially like having a dry well, where you have all the gravel inside that helps pull the water down. So we're not really attracting water that's not already coming onto the site. It's just being
But
directed
doesn't the-
towards our.
Doesn't the existing downspout go into a dry well?
Well, it's not it's essentially a dry well because there's a large gravel area that's built into the rain garden itself,
Yeah.
that central pool.
I mean,
That's
right
gonna be
now,
That's gonna be bypassed, is my understanding, for, in the future, and so that,
He's not talking about the garden, he's talking about the way it is right
He's
now.
talking about the way
Right.
that it is now.
Oh, I see.
the existing dry well will get bypassed by that.
Right. But
shunt that you put in the downspout.
Mr. Murray's point is well taken, that it's not attracting more water than's already on the site. And actually, we're creating a larger dry well essentially.
Right, but you're treating the water in a different way. You're not using the existing dry well, you're
Right,
using a rain garden.
right. We're essentially creating a larger dry well.
Okay.
If you get into a, say, a 2 or 2.5 inch rainstorm, does the excess water over and above what the rain garden can handle, does that then go into the downspout, into the dry well?
I believe it would still be within that central area, but we can definitely ask Trevor about,
Okay.
you know,
I'm just
bigger
wondering if
storms.
that might be what would create the icing problem that was there.
Right, we can definitely address that and get a real answer for you. Our sense is, no, it wouldn't be an issue, but that's, you know, hearsay. We'll find out.
It looks like from your proposal, you're looking for $4,000. Just a little background on this. I met with these two individuals about a month ago, and I actually suggested that, given the use of the downtown improvement money that was voted at town meeting, these projects seem to be appropriate, because the idea is to do projects that would help add to the character of the downtown, the flavor of the downtown, and both of these projects seem to fit within the scope of what we're proposing. And you have $15,000 as of July 1st that's available at your discretion, so.
And I think one of the larger points that Michelle touched on is the community aspect of this. It's not just a group doing it. We have wide ground support for it from multiple areas. I mean, I can speak from the garden.
Pun.
Pardon me?
Bad pun.
Oh, yeah, true. But I can speak to the whole piece about maintenance, because I wear the Garden Club task site hat, and that's always something that's a big concern for us is there going to be a long-term commitment to any project that we start? And we turn down many projects because we know that that is going to be an issue or could be an issue. And we don't want to start a project and see it fail. It's easy to design it. It's easy often to even get the startup funds. The hard part comes with maintaining it over time.
Right.
And I think that what's nice about the way this has been, the way that this is developed, is that there's a large number of boots on the ground, so to speak, to keep it going. And I think that sort of enhances the whole community flavor of the whole project. It's not only educational, but it also will pull in a number of different people and a number of different groups.
So my suggestion is that in terms of icing, in terms of runoff, I'm going to give you Trevor's email, and you can ask him that question directly, because he is the one who's doing the design, and he knows the answer to that question.
Okay.
I think that's valid, and I think that you should know the answer to that.
I had one other question that occurs to me, which is that it's a rain garden and a native pollinator garden combined. Is one side rain garden, one side pollinator, or are they just intermixed?
They're
How does it-
intermixed because the plants that go into the rain garden are native pollinator plants. And then what happens is that as you walk into the library and you go up the walk, Zulo here, library here, there's going to be a small crescent-shaped swath of native pollinators for teaching purposes, one more set in the middle, and then it jumps to the same kinds of pollinators in terms of design elements in the rain garden. So
I think there's a really nice continuity between the two gardens, and when you put them both together, it really speaks to the larger issue of how many of us, or most of us, should be considering our gardens in terms of how we plant moving forward.
And there will be the interpretive signs that I think will really serve to educate the public. A lot of people do go by that area and do come into the library. And I'm excited to provide programming for this.
Pete?
Question in the back.
Pete?
Yes, Betty.
Thank you.
Can you use the microphone? That allows people at home to hear you.
Like anyone has trouble hearing me. I have to tell you, last month I was talking to 300 people without a microphone, and they said, you know, we could hear you in the back. First of all, I'm very, very excited about the idea of a rain garden in Medfield. I think it's something wonderful. 7 years ago, I was certified by the state to teach the creation of rain gardens, specifically for the town of Reading, where they had a problem with pollution running off lawns of houses around a lake. And the state was willing to help pay for the new rain gardens, but only if they did it right. And so I've had a long background in this, and I find it exciting. What bothers me is that I've been to town meetings, I've been to the annual town meeting, all the rest. I hadn't heard anything about this until I saw your agenda for this. And I'm wondering how many people in town would like to have input into this. There's more to it than I think we've perhaps looked at. For one thing, they're talking about two separate gardens. I believe you're planning on taking out the center garden where the trees are?
No.
Right in front of the door?
No.
Then where are you putting the pollinator garden? Off to the Zulo side, on the other side of the pathway. So you're taking down some of the trees?
No.
No. There's a larger plan in place from the Zulo gallery. They're going to be redoing their entryway, and so the lilacs, the vintage lilacs, the heirloom lilacs are going to they will have to be moved, and then some of those plantings will be disturbed based on that. Ours will actually be in front of all that, close to the pathway. Okay. The second thing is, I looked at the number of plants that you have on your list, and this is planting what we like to call a party-ready garden. I mean, this garden will look done the day it's planted. The problem with that is that plants grow, and these plants intentionally will seed because they're natives and they'll do well here, and they will seed in the garden and they will grow in size, which means you'll need 3 times as much maintenance in the garden to keep it looking right. When you do a garden like that, it's great if you're holding a wedding that year, or if you have professionals coming in maintaining it. But when you've got a volunteer crew, many of whom have little or no gardening experience beyond mowing their lawn, it's very hard to keep a garden like that looking good. And as one proof of that is the center garden in front of the library. That garden was always meant to be dwarf bushes and dwarf trees, but they weren't kept pruned properly. And now bushes are 4 feet high and interfering with the trees. And yesterday I was up there removing quite a bit of black swallowwort, which is a horrible invasive that kills butterflies and is also, because there are a lot of horses in town, also dangerous for all grazing animals. And I think we have to think about that. I love the idea that people in town want to get involved, but volunteers don't always understand what that means. I just want to address 2 things.
Nancy, could you you need to use a microphone, I'm sorry.
I just want to address 2 things that you raised. One is actually there's a fair number of master gardeners that are going to be involved in the project, and 2 is the second is that we certainly can address the density of the plants with the designer of the garden. I don't think that's something that really we even need to take up time right now.
Well, can I address that? Can I?
Over 200 perennials, and I can't remember how
That's
many
right,
shrubs.
because the area of the rain garden and the pollinator garden to the side requires that. Now, as I said to you, Trevor has done this all over New England. He has done it for many municipalities. I'm trusting his judgment on this. So,
I'm afraid we're building a finished garden, and that's expensive and a very high maintenance problem.
well, I would,
With all due respect, I'd like to move on to
Yeah.
those issues can be dealt with. I'm sorry, I think this should be opened up to more of the community. I don't think the community has heard about this, and I think there should be more input. I would like to ask the selectmen to give the public a month or more to hear about this and be able to provide input before you make a decision on this.
Well, we're already going to have to talk to Trevor, apparently,
Right.
about some things, and so that we can't probably decide on it tonight. What sort of a schedule are you on?
so we wanted to get, the planting day that we wanted to do was October 7th.
Yeah,
And
so
it
there's
was-
time to,
Fine for you.
That's right.
Consider things,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah, okay.
And it was a day that the Boy Scouts could be involved, and the Eagle Scout project could happen, and it was also a day that works for Trevor. And the reason we wanted to do a fall planting is because plants do much better when they're planted in the fall. If we put them in the spring, they're at risk to be, burned up in the drought if we have one. So they'll have a chance to have their roots established. So that was the date that we wanted to go
Well,
in.
Michelle, that's true for perennials, but actually shrubs are much better off going in early in the spring so they can get their roots established because they have a much larger root system.
Well, regardless,
No, I mean, you can't,
No,
you can't
Betty,
look at a garden.
Betty,
as-
we have a professional landscaper who we would like to contract to do this. This is what he does.
Yes,
So-
I understand this, but what he is doing a finished garden. And I'm saying, in terms of funds and everything else, that is a mistake here.
That's,
Address those issues that
Right.
you kind of could find.
could we invite Trevor here?
okay.
So I guess,
I do
Betty,
hope those issues are considered, and particularly the issue of maintenance. Depending upon volunteers, and this is going to come up again later tonight, Medfield Garden Club cannot get people to take care of its gardens. You are constantly begging for people to come in and help on gardens. Yes, you did. What about the brand-new public safety building? There was no one to maintain it. It is because you can't say maintenance will be done by volunteers when they're simply not stepping up.
I would just like everyone, I'd just like everyone to remember that this is a library project, and Michelle is donating her time. The library, we have more volunteers than we know what to do with, and
I understand that. And this is complete, but I am saying that,
Numerous community organizations that want to be involved.
and I am saying they are not gardeners, and it will take experienced gardeners to oversee their work.
Will be experienced gardeners overseeing.
so Betty, what I'm going to suggest is that we have time before the selectmen are going to make a decision on this, and you apparently have some concerns. I would suggest that you talk to Trevor about your concerns. He's apparently going to get us some information as well. And then maybe you could report back to us on what you hear from Trevor about the issue of the created garden versus the one that's going to look right in a year or two, or the maintenance issues, the added maintenance for, because, I mean, it does look like a lot of plantings to me for 150 square feet, I think you said.
No, that's just the rain garden. The pollinator garden, there's additional plant material that goes in there.
Oh, okay, that's right, yeah, okay, I got confused because I was thinking that they were the same.
The plant list was prepared by, Garden in the Woods with Trevor. And Mark Richardson and Dan Jaffe they've been involved in this kind of planning before. So there were quite a few people involved in the number of plants.
Yeah,
Some
good.
some of the plants that are going in will be small, they're called plugs. And then others will be larger, so the plant number is appropriate.
Yeah.
That
I
does
mean,
not
what-
seem to be reflected in the prices. That's what I was looking at for size.
So Betty, I know that you're an expert in this area, obviously, and so that we would appreciate you maybe talking to Trevor and getting back to us about what you learned about it. So that I
Certainly.
think would be very useful and helpful to us to know. Any other questions or issues or?
I'd just like to make a comment.
Yes, here's the microphone.
Or maybe I'll just come over here. Thank
Okay.
you very much. Sorry
Thank
to
you.
push you out of the way.
That's okay.
So very briefly, I know it's getting kind of late at night. My name is Damien Sheehy, 9 Hillcrest Road, Medfield, and I'm a assistant scoutmaster with Troop 89 in Medfield. I'm not here to represent Troop 89 as a whole because we don't convene during the summer. So what I've got to say basically just represents my own experience as an individual scout parent. So I'm very much in favor of this project at the town library. As most people know, that conservation, energy, conservation, ecology, and the environment is a very large part of scouting, and part of our outdoor learning program, and it's been that way since scouting was founded in 1910. And also, a large part of our program is getting Boy Scouts young people involved in conservation projects in our community. Scouts need to complete conservation projects in order to advance in scouting. And they do this in several ways. Currently, we organize conservation projects with Hale Reservation. And in fact, some scouts complete Eagle Scout projects that are based around conservation that benefit our town. So currently, the way I see things is that, you know, when we do conservation projects in Rocky Woods, we take scouts out and they're clearing trails, and they're clearing storm drains, runoff that captures runoff water and deflects it to the side, clearing trees, leaves out of the way. So, you know, for kids, it doesn't really help them to connect the dots. There isn't really an educational message in that type of work, even though we call it conservation work. Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it great? And, you know, I take these kids out there, we do that, and they kind of do it going through the motions. And also when we take our kids out camping, one of the things that's very important is our respect for the environment, zero impact, and leave no trace. And I frequently go out there on weekends and volunteer with other Scout adult leaders and with kids to expose our kids to the environment and bring them outdoors and teach them about the outdoors. So when I get home on Sunday, what do? We unload stuff from the car. What do I do next? I go out to the front of my lawn, rip these things out, hop in the lawn tractor, drive around for 2 hours, and then turn on the sprinklers. So the bottom line is that, you know, this is getting into our water. I'm not an environmental scientist. I'm an engineer. But I'm smart enough to know that this stuff is getting into our water supply. The folks downstairs are paying money to take it out of our water supply. And we're not doing a very good job. This is the kind of information that we're passing on to our kids. So I think here there's an outstanding learning opportunity for the young people. You know, for guys like me, you know, we failed. You know, I think there's a great learning opportunity here where kids can learn about these things in the town library, because we don't want to be finding out about the impact that this has from somebody at Dana-Farber, right? We want to be, and this is a great opportunity for it to do so right here at the town library. And so that's why I'm very much in favor of this. And you know, full disclosure, my 2 kids would be involved if this project is passed. So I've got an incentive to educate my kids. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Just one question. Is Troop 89 taking this on as an ongoing project for the maintenance part?
I am the merit badge counselor for the camping merit badge, and that normally requires Scouts to contribute 6 hours of their time doing conservation work in order to earn that badge. Currently, they get this work done typically at Rocky Woods, and as I say, we're clearing brush out of trails and clearing leaves, and you know, it doesn't help kids to connect the dots. What I see the benefit here is that it's an educational project. It helps them to connect the dots. Stuff like this is reduced. Right. You know, these chemicals are getting into our waterways. You know, bee populations are plunging as a result of this. So I think there's a very important educational message here.
Oh, absolutely. But my question is, are you signing on to do it year after year, or is it only a one-year commitment?
Well, one of the Scouts' mottos is, a Scout is trustworthy. So I can't speak for the whole troop, but I can speak for myself, and this is something I'd pass on. I've got a lot of difficulty actually getting these projects from Rocky Woods, because sometimes they don't have anything we can do, and Scouts have a backlog they're waiting for stuff to do. Okay, so I'm very excited to have, you know, to have Scouts working on a project like this.
Damien, can I try taking a run as a member of the troop committee?
Sure.
So the short answer is the troop committee, because they're not even meeting, has not made any commitment, because you're in a position to do it. But Troop 89 does take on certain things. For instance, every year they clean up Vine Lake Cemetery. And so I would think that, quite aside from just an ad hoc merit badge by merit badge opportunity, I would assume you'd bring this up as possibly another annual commitment that the troop would make.
Yes, I
to
would.
maintain this. It's got great visibility. It's a different kind of thing. And neither one of us would know whether the troop committee would vote for that, but it sounds like the kind of project that would be receptive to it.
Right.
I would like to, excuse me,
Okay.
when Damien and I met to talk about this project, I told him that in the spring, fall cleanup for their merit badge for conservation, I am going to teach the older scouts so they can teach the younger scouts. We're going to do weed identification, cultivation, pruning, deadheading, those kinds of skills. And I want to talk to them about native plants and about the butterflies and, the pollinators that they're going to see there. So I have already committed to Troop 89 to be part of that educational process, so that this will be more meaningful for them for their conservation badge. So.
Yep.
Okay.
May I just
Yes.
wanted to comment on what Betty said, and I think she has a valid point about making sure that we have the ongoing maintenance. But I think the critical piece of this is the educational aspect. We're not bringing in expert gardeners to do this. We're trying to train people to become gardeners and to learn about conservation and ecology. And that's the key to this whole thing. I mean, that's the exciting part of it, is that these people are going to be mentored and coached, and they're going to learn a lot.
Yep, I was just thinking,
Just not for scouting. It's for the community as a whole, and I think that's great. As you pointed out, it's a high traffic area where you've got a lot of people coming and going into the library, and it's a great location.
okay, any other comments, questions?
If I could, I'd like to just summarize to make sure I know where we came out on this. So a couple of quick points. One, Mike, there is no meals tax fund. There is revenue that comes into the town in the form of a meals tax that goes into the general revenues of the town. There is a downtown improvement fund funded $15,000 as of the start of this fiscal year, with the authority of the selectmen being able to disperse those funds.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
This is a library project that the Garden Club is supporting. So to Betty's point about the public,
Actually, the garden club is not involved. Members of the garden club are volunteering their time, but it is.
this is why, okay, very good. So
Project.
That's fine.
Not a Medfield
Okay.
Garden Club project.
So the challenge of ensuring that there's the adequate public participation that Betty's asking for rests with the library. By the time you're gonna come back in and ask us to actually commit money, we might hope that the general public would feel like they've had their adequate chance to say what they had to say. Trevor will deal with that and modify the design or not as appropriate. By the time this comes back up, that part of this process should probably have been largely resolved, or at least we know which corner of the room two different factions are in. Is that fair? Okay.
Can I just ask, so in terms of notifying the public, what would that look like? Aside from this meeting, which they can see on,
Short answer is, it's your project, you'll have to
My
figure that out, but I would think that there's only my sense is there's some knowledgeable people in this room representing different parts of the public that would care, that would probably know how to get in touch with those parts of the public that would care. So you publish what you're doing, and you get the right people involved.
all right.
Hi, Brandy Erb, 1 Newell. Might I suggest, since every Thursday night you have a vast audience that would be very interested, you maybe put a table in front of the library and have a little informational
Right. I
little
can do
map
that.
of where it's going and what you're doing, and ask for a little sign up, educate the public. I'm sure Memo would love it.
Okay,
And
thank
send a
you.
message out to the.
Oh, and Facebook page.
And right, yep. I know how to do these things, yes. I do.
Neil, can you just use the microphone, please? Thank you. No, then people at home cannot hear you.
The best way to bring out everybody in the community who feels strongly about things is to use the Concerned Citizens of Medfield Facebook page that reaches everybody who cares about stuff.
I'm not really part of that. I understand it's somewhat contentious, and as the public library, I choose not to be involved with that, but I appreciate that. But we do have avenues We have Twitter, we have Facebook, and we have our website, which, you know, is probably the best way to get it, and the patch, and Hometown Weekly as well. So yes, we do have avenues to get the word out about this project.
And I had one final point for my fellow selectmen. When I first thought about this, it's a great idea. I love the idea. But the question, the policy question for me was, should the town be funding an educational activity of the library? This discussion has said, and the reason I asked the question in that hard-nosed way is because suddenly the Council on Aging said, we have a retirement seminar that we want to do. How would we say no to one and yes to another? But what I'm hearing tonight is the reason we would say yes to this is, quite aside from the education benefit, this is something that we perceive to be of benefit to the downtown community. So the reason, if we do say yes to something, we're saying yes, as much as we like the education and the whole idea, is because we're basically thinking this is a good use of funds to improve the downtown.
So the lesson in that to the Council on Aging is to hold their seminar at the gazebo.
And plant flowers and trees. I just wanted to be clear. That's okay. Right.
Anything else? Yes. Yeah.
I would just like to say that the town of Medfield has a very strong history of community involvement and supporting of projects such as this. My wife takes care of one of these corner gardens at the corner of Phillips and South Street. She's been doing that for many years, and many other members who happen to be members of the garden club but not have committed many, many hours over a long time. I myself have driven for Meals on Wheels for many, many years. And so I think that to say that there are no volunteers in this town who will keep this up is giving this town a little bit of a disservice.
And I will say the public library is a place where every high school student comes and asks for meaningful work for their school. And now having Michelle there, who is there as the educator for the garden, I think it's invaluable.
And I'm doing a garden now.
Microphone.
Oh, sure.
Yes.
I'm doing a garden now in the back, and it's a native pollinator shade garden, and I'm teaching there. I work there about every 2 to 3 days. I'm teaching there all the time. Little kids come, adults come. I had a woman stop the other day and she said, could I have a plant list? And I went through the plants. So I'm already teaching, and we haven't even installed, you know, the rain or pollinator garden. So it has tremendous potential, and I would hope that you would be open to that educational piece for the town if we can resolve whatever issues you have for safety.
Yep, okay. So unless there are more questions, I think we have to go on to the next garden club question.
I'm so glad that I came after my 12-hour shift in the ICU.
We tried to talk long enough so you could get here.
That'll be easy compared to this. Huh?
Apparently. I think that our proposal speaks for itself, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to present anything. I just want to ask if you have any questions or anything in particular I can answer for you.
I'm very appreciative of what the Garden Club does at so many sites around town, and I think it's personally, I guess I think it's a very nice investment for the town to make in the Garden Club's efforts for the town.
I always think it's one of the first things people notice that have never been to Medfield before, about all the planting islands around town and how beautiful it looks, and it's year-round too. It's not you just in the winter season they manage to put greens out and the wreaths, and it's really a big asset to the town, I think.
The one thing I do want to highlight from the proposal that I submitted is that many of these sites are in need of renovation, and that's sort of what the ongoing project is. I started this last year, and we're doing it in order of priority, and I'm trying to do 2 or 3 at a time, and it'll probably take us a couple of years to move through them all. And along the same lines of the plant list that we were discussing with the rain and pollinator gardens, the whole, the incentive and the plan is to move forward with plants that are more native, more water tolerant of drought, less water hogs, and to sort of move to a point where the gardens are a little bit more self-sustaining than they are now. So that's a lot of the reason that we're requesting some funds to assist us with that endeavor, and hopefully they'll be even better moving forward.
Could I ask, I noticed your budget is $4,900. How much are you looking for from the town?
We were respectfully requesting 50%, about half. We thought that that was a reasonable amount to ask for, because we're able to provide fairly easily about half those funds with our fundraisers. And we thought that because we're doing this new initiative to upgrade them all, that it made sense to ask, or was reasonable to ask for half.
I uncharacteristically, after I read your request, normally being the hard-nosed finance guy, I started off that way. It's like a volunteer organization getting something started, then dumping it on the town. And then I saw the list of sites that you're doing. And then I thought about the number of years you've done it. And I actually came out totally in an opposite place. I'm in favor of the money you're asking for, and in fact, personally, I would be willing to support having the town reimburse you for the money that you spend for materials. I'm not trying to get you to change, but I want everybody to hear where I'm coming from. You know, we had some people who didn't take responsibility for their dogs on town property, and without blinking an eye, we spent $5,000 to put in pooper scooper stations. Here we have a garden club that for years has done a tremendous job of truly having an impact on the town, and you're finally coming to us and saying, can you help us out with some of the materials? So personally, I'm in favor of it. Beyond that, this is not a votable thing, but I would informally be in favor of us adopting a policy. We're not committing money because we don't have it to commit, but that informally, for at least as long as I'm around here, I would think we should have at least an informal policy that says when you need the town to reimburse you for materials expenses, understanding there's not an unlimited budget, but you've got a starting point, so it's that or less.
We're pretty frugal people, I will say.
I personally think the town should be prepared to spend that kind of money to reimburse you for that, rather than force you into fundraising, just so you can raise money so you can give stuff to the town like that.
And that's
It's your expertise.
And that's actually partially why we decided to, because we never really thought about coming to the town to ask for funds, but that is part of the reason that we did, because our fundraisers are taking more time and attention than we want to devote. We would rather devote time to the sites rather than the actual events that we have to run to make the money.
So this wasn't a scheme to lay low for 85 years and then try to swindle the town out of $2,500. The master plan has finally come to fruition. Yeah.
Exactly.
I would move that we authorize these funds for $2,500.
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
Thank you very much. We truly appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you for sitting with us for this long evening. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for keeping us entertained.
I will say, I think if anyone had the over on that discussion, you definitely hit. So.
I think she was a plant.
You know, I honestly, I was I'm sure this would have been like a very quick meeting, so glad it
So I'm going to suggest that we skip the action item.
You're watching Medfield TV, community shows.